Going Live. That was a programme, wasn't it? Going Live.
You're old enough to remember Tiswas, which
I love Tiswas. I was a devotee of Tiswas.
Do you remember when, obviously Tiswas in its pomp with Terence et al. And
Lenny Henry.
And then they all left, and they left like the Tiswas B team.
Well, they went to become an adult programme, and
Yes.
it didn't quite work the same, because it was almost as if it was subversive in the morning, but when you could get away with it at night, it wasn't quite the same.
I'll show you that that message. If you're wondering where Mark is, by the way, we've sent him to put together a consortium to buy the Bradford Bulls, or whatever's left of them. So that's why he's not here this week. We will.
The good news is...
We have a special guest coming in.
No, we do have a special guest. He's on his way. And...
People were surprised that you said he, because they thought it'd be her, but she's not her. That's next week.
He's coming from 8,000 miles away, our special guest.
I don't know where that could be.
And it's in reverence to the fact that it's International Weekend.
Well, it's International Month now.
And he has one of the great stories of rugby league to tell. It's just that he's...
Right.
Well,
he's
on, I was going to say Caribbean time, but that might give it away.
Is it the head of the Bermudan Rugby League?
Bermudan Triangle.
Got love the fact League Express this week. Obviously, there's nothing going on. Have to fill pages. Half a page of international squads. Some people think. Headlines in the papers today, by the way. It's magic. Get rid of the Magic Weekend and turn it into nines, which I think Phil said for about 5 years on this programme.
Dr. Kukash was a guest once of a version of this programme, and we discussed that then, and he was very keen on the idea. He was going to propose it.
Lachlan Coote Alting Anthem. Who cares? Who cares?
Leeds have been fined.
Yeah, well, we need to talk about that. And in the League Express, the other one. Oh, congratulations, by the way, to League Weekly. 900 issues.
Well,
some thought it won't last, but it has.
And there were we crowing about 100.
I know, 900. And they have to fill it every week. In League Express, Zach's back again. I'm sure he's after this.
So is that 900 issues that Dave Parker's been speculating about potential transfers?
It's not about non-league footballing in this one. He's just running out of things to talk about.
I don't know. Good evening, everyone.
Yeah, I need to get the comments up because I don't know what people are saying yet about the programme. So.
I think they'll be saying that Leeds should have a points deduction for their breach of silence. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course. I need to get Gary Hetherington's statement up, but yes.
Because you're an intelligent man.
Well, I've got a 2-1 in media production. That's not necessarily.
And I would throw this out to our esteemed listeners. He said, filling while the guest arrives.
Yeah. This show used to be good. I didn't realise that.
When it's claimed that a salary cap is live, the word being live, why are we now hearing about a breach from 2018? Would be my only comment on that.
Obviously, the funny thing about this is, of course, Leeds have overspent accidentally.
Accidentally, an administrative error.
On Luke Briscoe, among others. And we're still rubbish, which, you know, if you're going to do like Wigan and Bradford and actually avoid relegation...
You're going to break the world transfer record to make sure you don't get...
Talk about hiding in plain sight, Wigan and Bradford. I don't know which iteration of Bradford that was now.
So Leeds have got a £10,000 fine with another 10,000 held over.
Yes.
And because it was done in agreement with the RFL rather than going to an independent tribunal,
and it's the RFL, not Super League, just to confuse everything.
There is no points deduction. Well, there was no Super League in 2018.
No.
But apparently it's a live cap.
It's a live
only 2 years late.
And that's why we don't know about the financial transgressions of, say, teams in the Championship, because it's not live in the Championship.
And the other big news was one of the consortium for the still called Bulls at the moment has pulled out, but the consortium itself is ploughing ahead, and positive noises from Red Hall about accepting their bid.
I've got these things. So you're going to fill 2 hours with reviews of the papers, hashtag space filling?
No, we have a guest who you will be absolutely enthralled by.
Gary Hetherington. It's not Gary Hetherington. He's not the special guest.
He's not come from 8,000 miles.
He is. He sounds he's more Australian. He's trying to find Trent Merritt. I've seen him on the posters around Headingley yesterday. Gary Hetherington, CEO of the Leeds Rhinos, not director of rugby. That's the other fellow. There's also the director of rugby of the England This was an administrative error on our part for which I take responsibility, and we are obviously disappointed to lose our 23-year unblemished salary cap compliance record.
One of the few remaining clubs still to have one.
Martin Keller wrote this.
Yes.
There's one for the
One for the aficionados.
Yeah, unblemished. Yeah, and he says some other things and explains where it all went wrong for Leeds, but
It was to do with the late lodging of contracts.
it does give everyone a chance to kick Leeds Rhinos, which is part of the.
As you
part of the
say,
sport,
had they won the competition in 2018, possibly would have been worthwhile.
And the people moaning about they don't get a points deduction is, of course, well, they didn't break it by enough, and the club said, well, you can have fun.
And it was by agreement with the governing body.
Yeah, so.
How that works, I don't. In future, agree with the governing body.
Ronald's moaning about the camera handle. Apologies, but it will, I think it will work better when there are three of us in the studio. I think. Our guest deserves all that room when they turn up. Get in touch on Facebook and on YouTube. I'm a bit discombobulated today. The events of the last couple of weeks are all starting to catch up. I will say, lots of criticism about what's happened on this programme and such for the last couple of weeks, and it's almost as if we're getting blamed for making a decision. So decision's made. If you don't like it,
I think the other thing as well is that there has to be a degree of integrity in what we try and do. We think we've done that. There is nothing finite or permanent about what we've done, but we needed to take a stand at this particular point. That's all it is.
you know,
No more, no less.
as I always say, there's a million other rugby league podcasts out there, some of which are rubbish, but they exist. If you want to go patronise them, if you will, rather than us, that's your choice.
Try us all.
You know,
We're all different.
at the end of the day, I don't want to get into that whole we're doing it for free thing, because I think that's disingenuous, or is when other people say it on other programmes. But we are here of our own volition. Who knows how long we'll be here for or not.
However long the good people want us.
You don't have
But-
to listen.
We did have an exclusive international weekend this weekend. We're not talking about anything domestic,
No,
because that's all finished. And overall, very successful, I would have said.
I mean, we'll talk about the other thing later when our guest turns up. We might as well talk about the Nines first. I watched most of it. Well, I watched some of it, and then England lost to Lebanon, and I fell asleep because I thought, well, there's no point now until the women come back on, and I missed it because I felt stayed asleep.
I made the mistake of staying awake and watching it all.
Because I thought, oh, Wales aren't going to beat Lebanon, are they? And they did. So well done, Wales.
And then Lebanon, by then, had
Yeah.
2 men from their squad. Again, eligibility rules.
Especially when no one's actually from Lebanon anyway.
Who was responsible for checking before?
The same people who check the live salary cap in Super League.
You would have thought, wouldn't you, that if it was an age issue, that before the players took to the field, that somebody had checked their birth certificates, passports, they had their names registered, and I know that in the European qualifiers, which start this Saturday,
Scotland versus Greece, Spain versus Italy, maybe Ireland. Can't remember. Double check.
Scotland versus Serbia, Spain versus Ireland.
Got them completely wrong, so that was good.
So you were close.
Yeah. Got some of the things who might be involved.
But all of those players are not named in the final 22-man squad until they have passed an eligibility check, which is undertaken by the people who run that competition, which in this case is the Rugby League European Federation. So that aside, too many people talking about the crowd. I mean, this is the first time we've had a World Cup Nines. It's out of season in Australia. So, nearly 30,000 people there over the 2 days. It's not to be sneezed at. What we need to do is quickly put in place the next edition of this. I personally, and again, absolutely would be delighted to know what anybody watching and listening thinks. I thought it was great. I think this format works. I think you've got enough of the 13-a-side game to make sure it isn't basketball with an oval-shaped ball, which sevens can definitely be. You have to have skills in both attack and defence. I think it's a great format for promoting skill. I think we saw some amazing offloads. Thought the interesting thing from the women's point of view is clearly that New Zealand and Australia have moved on because they have a very intense competition.
Yes.
But I think England showed that they'd moved on as well. They haven't necessarily closed any gaps, but they lost to the Cook Islands in the World Cup. They convincingly beat PNG in this one. So I think there are signs that the women's game here is getting some traction. The quality they now have to match is huge, but vitally important on the back of what we've seen this weekend is the further announcement today that there is equality of pay in the World Cup between the women, the men and the wheelchair, and prize money as well for the women in the wheelchair for the first time. So I think, again, all of that is down to this has been a successful weekend to put it all together.
The men and the women failed at the nines, but the wheelchair team hammered the Aussies
Just
today.
thrashed them.
84, 12,
28.
28, there you go. You had an 80 in it, that was good. Look, I'm going to ignore the comments on Facebook that are saying what I expect them to say. I'm not even going to address it again because I'm sick of it. And if you don't like it, I know people say, why do you tell people to stop listening? If you don't like it, don't. There are plenty of rugby league things that I think are crap and I don't listen. Don't use the phrase virtue signaling, don't use snowflakes. If you do, you've already lost the argument. It's not political correctness gone mad or anything like that. Go listen to something else. I'm sorry to say this. I don't want you to go listen to something else, but I can't be bothered. I come here and you come here and criticise me and the people I work with.
There's got to be better
care.
things to do than
Well,
look backwards. Let's look forward.
The nines and somebody else has made this one. I think it was John on Facebook said, if we have a nines competition and replace the Magic Weekend with that, we know at the Magic Weekend we're going to get the best players playing against each other. If we turn it into a nines weekend, you and I know, because it's happened in the past, that all the top players, hamstring, calf, whatever, and then we'll get a load of kids playing.
I think there's two issues. One is clearly from what we saw of the men's team, our players need to play nines a bit more. There is a history in Australia and New Zealand of touch rugby.
Well, that's the great thing about the commentary, wasn't it? And the Australian commentary was dreadful for a lot of it. My first
It
favourite,
probably wasn't the most informed I've ever heard.
my favourite was the women are fully professional over here, which is interesting. I'm sure they'd love to know that. That's Catalans and Toulouse are in the French top flight. I'm sure they'd be interested to know that.
I thought they were quite demeaning about the French, to be honest.
And on the women, they said, they asked the female who was involved, and I can't remember her name, apologies, it was 2 in the morning. How will they change from 13s to 9s? I'm thinking, none of these players play 9s, whether they're male, female or aliens.
No. But I think there is a clear evidence, the fact that growing up, a lot of the Antipodeans play touch rugby.
Yes.
So that's why Sean Johnson was hailed as the man of the tournament, because he has I think he's played for New Zealand at touch rugby. So there is a history and a tradition within their competitions, more than ours. So it lends itself to the question, do we need a domestic nines so that people can become more au fait with how the competition works, in which case the debate about Magic Weekend is worth having. It may not be the answer, but it's worth having. Or do we say the way to promote nines, because it worked this weekend and it has got some traction as a short form of the game, is to make it an international event?
Yes.
In which case you have it at the end of the season. And do you have it every 2 years instead of every 4 years? Is it too long to wait to 2023?
I don't see why you don't even have it nearly every year.
And do you swap it in hemisphere? I mean, the other thing is the Australian team that won it and deserved to win it, played really well, was not the first choice Australian team. There were a lot of young kids that hadn't played internationals before. They still are good enough to win that competition. I would still go and watch that Australian team playing in a nines tournament over here. You don't have to overcommit the top players.
As we know with the Rugby Union sevens, which is a completely different sport to Rugby Union 15s, they're not the star names. There's no one involved there who is a recognisable household name, is there? Mason Caden Brown of Jamaica was playing in that earlier in the season.
But I actually think that at the end of the season, obviously you couldn't do it in 2 years' time because we've got a World Cup at the same time. But maybe the prelude to the Kangaroos coming over here next autumn,
Are they?
apparently, would be
Comes out in a moment.
a nines tournament.
Yeah. Stringy Bob has said, can the Nines become the empty August bank holiday fixture now the Challenge Cup finals move to July?
Again, I think it depends if you want a domestic nines or an international nines. If you have a domestic nines, and we've said this for 3-4 years, I think you have to make it an event in its own right that entices the top players to play. So there has to be £100,000 winner takes all prize money. There has to be a series of concerts between the games. There has to be a powder hall sprint so we get to genuinely know who the fastest person in rugby league is. And there's prize money attached to all that. So if you are Jermaine McGilvray, you want to be running against Tom Johnson just to prove who the fastest man in
Full kit
rugby.
with a ball.
Yeah.
All that stuff.
So I think you've got to really turn it into an event, and then all the top players will play, and that will. The other thing about the domestic that I like is that when the fixtures come out for Magic Weekend, your team will play on one of the 2 days, and the decision is yours as to whether you want to commit to staying over and going to a day when your team necessarily isn't playing. If it's the format that we saw at the weekend, then your team would play on both days. You might play 1 game on the first day and 2 games on the second day. So the incentive is to make it a festival and stay and be part of it, and everybody, make a commitment to it. So I can see it working on a number of levels. But what I really liked was it was just genuinely enjoyable.
Yeah.
It showed off all the skills of the sport. There were some massive hits. Clearly,
And what about that tackle from Kelsey Gentles on the Australian?
Brilliant.
Stopping the Toronto was good.
And there were some sublime moments of skill with flip passes and trying to create overlaps.
Well, I mean, here's the point made by a couple of people. Matt has mentioned it, and Dean as well. Did we, England, pick the wrong squad?
Yes. Well, I think we could have picked...
The Lebanon game proved that.
Well, I think Australia picked one bespoke forward. But they had people like Wade Graham, who's played standoff and is the size of a forward. But they had people who were picked for their ability to move the ball. And I think we picked a pretty stereotypical, we'll have our couple of props and we'll have our couple of back rowers. And so, yes, I think that's, again, part of us learning how to play nines.
We're going to talk a lot about international rugby league because that's all that's going on at the moment. I'm enjoying you. The Rugby League International Federation had a conference.
Congress.
Congress, sorry. Conference is next year. The big news out of it is Ralph Rimmers had a shave, which I tweeted about on Friday night, I think it was.
Not a suit that fits him.
Or was it Saturday night? I can't remember. And they did lots of talking. Steve Mascot managed to sneak in. I don't know if you've got any International Rugby League t-shirts to the floor. Probably that's from our life ones, because as much as it's nice that they're talking about having a peacetime competition between the Armed Forces of Australia, New Zealand and the UK along with the Turkish national side, right, that's a great idea, wonderful. And they've changed the name of the RLAF to International Rugby League. But where's the bloody calendar?
Well,
because, we're going to talk about this with our guest, but...
Hats off to you, because my thought when I read the press release...
Oh, we've changed the name,
great,
wonderful.
We've had a lovely time, lunch was great. Where's the 8-year calendar we were promised 8 years ago?
The NIRB rebranded as World Rugby, but no one cares in the real world that they've changed their name because everyone doesn't care. FIFA could change its name to the World Federation of Football and no one will care.
Well,
because they've got a calendar, we know when everything's going to be.
You hit upon it just before by saying, are the Kangaroos coming? The fact is, we don't have dates and venues.
We know, don't we?
But we should be buying tickets, shouldn't we?
You had that briefing, weren't you, a couple of years ago at Leeds for the World Cup? Was it I can't remember which briefing it was now. Was it the one where they unveiled the cockerel?
I think
where we were told that Australia were coming next year to play England, and people were going on, oh, well, not Great Britain, because Great Britain aren't in the World Cup.
And Great Britain is a touring vehicle.
Without going back over old ground, and has been proven pretty much by the squad apart from Lachlan Coote, it's England. The England team is the main focus, and it should be.
I think we'll also find that we got a fair amount of money towards staging the World Cup because it was from Sport England, not Sport Great Britain.
And the Northern Powerhouse. It's interesting thing in the first issue of 4020, a big picture of David Cameron. What happened to him?
Frightening.
So the Nines, I enjoyed it. I think they staged it in a fascinating way, didn't they? Friday night, obviously, which was the night in Australia, and then the Saturday throughout the day. The problem is, I guess, if we had it over here at the end of the season, we were cold yesterday. But anyway.
Yeah, but we're Nash, aren't we? Because we used to go to those games at the start of the season in that weather.
Yeah. I don't know. Would you want to sit out all day?
No, the fact that's another very good point, that it's spring over there and the weather was 30 degrees, so it's conducive to doing something like that. Whereas you're absolutely right. You know, if it's 6 degrees and you've sat there for 8 hours, you'd feel
it. Did Wayne forfeit the semi-final versus New Zealand just to give me some pain? 1, 6, 7 and 9 and props them now together. I fell asleep by that point. I think we'd even wanted to win it, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
But did he pick the wrong squad for the competition? I think we would say perhaps yes. But who are we to out Wayne Bennett? Well, we're here to have an opinion.
I think he needed more genuine speeds, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I would have liked to have seen, you know, Jade Connor have his hands on the ball more, because I think his style of play is conducive to Nines, and it you know, you become a bit part player if you play a very structured format. It has to be slightly improvised. Very impressed with Samoa, who again didn't have all the big names out, but played it beautifully. I thought they enhanced the tournament. Disappointed with Fiji, who, for me, I thought, again, you know, they're going to perhaps working on the principle of rugby union sevens, that they're going to embrace the idea of speed and moving the ball about. Never really got going.
Got to see the Tongan Invitational. IX.
I think it's safe to say our guest is about to make it.
So,
Do come in.
is it Brian Barwick?
No, it's led upstairs by Brian Barwick.
That's absolutely freezing.
You're wearing layers, man.
Take a seat.
Make yourself at home. We're on air.
Yeah, well, we've just been talking for 25 minutes, haven't we? But absolutely.
We haven't told everybody who you are, but now it's obvious. I think
You must be glad to get back to Jamaica tomorrow.
we should formally introduce you. For those that don't recognise him, because he's got 75 layers on. Not only the coach of the Jamaicans, the director of rugby of the Jamaican Rugby League Association, with one of the greatest stories of rugby league to tell, which over the next hour or so will let people in on your story, which I find astonishing. Privileged enough to have known you for a while, and the work and the effort and the sacrifice that you put in. First of all, obviously we can now talk about yesterday's game, because we've been avoiding that. Brilliant performance by your boys in the second half in particular. Took them a little while, I think, just to get used to that speed of play. But once they did, left a real impression. You must be delighted with that.
Yeah, definitely. First, thanks for having me here, guys. Apologies for being late.
You're on Caribbean time.
No, I'm still thawing out, So, just had a few errands to do with Alex. And yeah, yesterday, fantastic day, historical day for us. I was warmed by the performance in the second half. I was a bit worried, first half when we were a bit under the pump. As you said, the speed of the game definitely would have taken a toll on us. We made some bold moves. We started with the domestic boys. Kamisi McCain started at prop as well. So I was happy at the end of the game. Happy by our effort throughout, because even in the first half, when we were really facing a hard time, especially on that left edge, I think the boys kept trying, but we didn't have enough ball early on. But second half we came out, positive attitude, big effort, and we were winning the half until the last 5 minutes when England got their second score. And overall, all the coaches, Jermaine Coleman, Chev, myself, Alex, we just keep saying to the boys, that was a big effort, and I think the crowd saw that. They never quit, and I think the most important thing is that it was a credible performance. by Jamaica.
In terms of the occasion, for a lot of the guys, I mean particularly the two domestic guys that came up, that's got to be the biggest crowd they've played in front of, probably at the most prestigious stadium they've ever played at. All of that is going to stand you in really good stead because this is really about the World Cup in 2021. Again, that side of the preparation must have delighted you.
Yeah, definitely. That is what this fixture was all about. Each time we do something in Jamaica, we try to top ourselves. Each time we have a dream and we achieve it, we try to move on to the next level. And this game was all about that. The two boys, Kamisi McCain and Jensen Morris. Yes, this was definitely the largest crowd. I think they've played before. Prior to this game, we have played up in front of maybe 6,000 or 7,000 in Toronto before, but I don't think that Kamisi was at that game. So the occasion was pretty big for them. Certainly, the boys kept saying to me, that field, that grass, like, can we take it home? I mean, certainly the quality of the stadium was fantastic on the pitch. And, it just gives them a taste of what's to come in 2021. And, hopefully it opens a few eyes back home as to where we are, what we need to do, the domestic players and our UK-based players. If you're going to play against tier 1 countries and other top countries, that top 10, this is the level that we need to rise to. And remember, this is not the full England team. But at the same time, it's 17 full-time players, and they're amongst the best here. So I think that it's a really good preparation. That's what we really wanted from this game. Wanted to give the boys that test, that environment, that feel. They had a great camp. Thanks to our various sponsors. JR Sports, Age Partnership. They had everything that they needed. They had pro skins for the first time. Especially for us, I'm wearing mine now because I'm cold.
Believe me, this ain't cold.
So it's freezing. It's freezing for me. So yeah, they had their energy packets and stuff like that from MSC. So the week feel was great. It's the best preparation I've ever had for a game. The coaching staff, top quality. I mean, Jermaine Coleman, Chev Walker, they really put some good work into the boys. They responded well, and then of course, arguably, this is the strongest team that we've ever fielded. With Lawrence in there, Greg Johnson, current Super League players, Ash. It's probably the strongest team we've put out on the field, and I think that I was really pleased with how they responded, and I think it does well for us. And looking forward to next year, we can learn from a few things that we could have improved on now. We know the standard that we want to be at. One of the big things for me for this week is, the players coming into camp having so little to worry about. When we were going to the USA for the World Cup qualifiers, players were having to find money to pay their airfare to go across and stuff like that. As an organization, we were struggling, with a lot of things. And so to come into this environment where they're just coming in, staying at head in the lodge, fantastic staff, just being able to train and be ready and have everything they need, believe it or not, this is the first time that, the boys, the second time they each got a bag. Simple stuff like that goes a far way. And for us, because, we're always realistic about where we are as a rugby league playing nation. Rugby league in Jamaica, as I say, it's not really recognized. It's a very small sport. It's a small niche of us that really is pushing it. So we don't have the resources to do a lot of things that we want to do, and like some of the countries in that top 10 might be able to do. You look at maybe the Welsh, the Scottish. I know finances is tough for everybody. It's international rugby league, but at the same time, I think that if we are going to, take this thing to the next level, certain basics we want to do for our players, and we want to make sure that the environment is right for them.
There's been a lot of talk with obviously Great Britain going on tour. That includes 3 players who are heritage based. So the Jackson Hastings, the Blake Austins, the Lachlan Coops. They've pledged their allegiance, and there still is, and some of our listeners will no doubt verify that. There's some reticence to accept them. But your heritage guys yesterday, who are going to improve the overall standard of the game on the island, and speaking to Ashton after the game, he's desperate to go out there and pay something back to the domestic guys. One of the things that struck me, and presumably why the camp was so successful, is because it means everything to these guys. That this isn't a badge of convenience, that what they stand for is vitally important to them. This isn't a second tier choice. This is them paying homage genuinely to their heritage.
Yeah, definitely. It's a big discussion in International Rugby League, the question of heritage players. For us in Jamaica, I would say that, well, from a board perspective, certainly, we're very clear as to our position. The motto for our country is "out of many, one people," and as an island state, there are about 2.7 million people on the island, but there are 3 times that living in the US, in Canada, and also in the UK. And for us, our people have always been more than those who are living on the rock, as we call it. My mother lives in the States, so does my brother. My wife lives in Canada with my child. It's just a reality of being an island person. And so that has never really been a challenge for us. The only time it's been a challenge is when the players back home, if they see a game happening and there are no domestic players, that's when they get upset and they talk. But in terms of, Jamaicans, whether you're living there or whether your parents are from Jamaica or your grandparents, we view you as Jamaican. And it's a cultural thing, and it's enshrined in our laws as well. All these guys who are playing for the team, every single one of them can get their Jamaican passport and citizenship papers if they so wish. It's not just the International Federation's eligibility rules that makes them Jamaican. So for us, it's really not a big issue. I think that globally, I think rugby league fans, we are a bit hard on ourselves. If you look at other sports, it's very similar in terms of in football, heritage players represent for their countries, and in other sports as well. And I think that we are a bit hard on ourselves, and we're a bit unrealistic as well. International Rugby League is a great spectacle, and it's something that we need to push. And in order for the product to be the best it can be, heritage players are a necessary part of that component. If I had 17 domestic players playing against the Knights yesterday, I mean, really, is that something that 7,000 people would come to watch? So we have to be realistic about where we are, and we also have to be realistic about the world that we live in. I think it's a bit small-minded thinking, when persons are saying that, well, you weren't born there, so you shouldn't represent the nation. I think that's ridiculous, because everybody's situation is different. People don't know why people left their homeland and went somewhere else, and so I personally, it's something I have a problem with. On the other side of the coin, for me, the thing is, we're developing the game internationally, so you can't ignore your domestic scene. I cannot support or believe that you should take a team to the World Cup and no one from your competition is in there and playing. For me, that's a problem that I have, and I think that it's rules to address stuff like that should be brought in my personal opinion.
So there should be a quota that says definitely a minimum amount of your 22-man squad have to be from the domestic league.
Definitely, and whether it's one has to be in the field or whatever it is, that's what I think. Of course, we know the issue is professionalism. At the end of the day, Australia is fine, England is fine, France is fine, perhaps Wales right now, because they have professional teams in their jurisdictions. But for everybody else, really and truly, it's not the case, and it's a tough one, because again, it comes down to the spectacle on the field. Sometimes it comes down to a safety issue. But in my opinion, you can't get to a World Cup unless your domestic scene is at a certain level, because you have to be an affiliate, so you must have a certain number of club teams and junior teams playing. My gosh, man, you can't tell me that not one guy from that scene can go on a World Cup field. Otherwise, you're wasting our time. So for me, that balance is needed, and I know that culturally here in England, I mean, I'm aware of the situation where the three guys were selected to the Great Britain team, and a lot of comments, I've read some of the comments on social media. And for me, it's not a question for me because it's a cultural thing, and the culture, I don't understand the culture here. It's much different from in Jamaica. So I'm trying to figure out why there's such strong sentiments, but not being from here, it's hard to to feel it. But I've seen a lot of comments about it, and I personally don't know the individual situation of each player. I know that some of them, their grandparents are English, but I don't know how long they've been living in the country. I don't know what their roots are like here. So it's not for me to comment on. But what I will say is that as a community, I think rugby league as a community, I really need to take a look at ourselves and what we stand for, the values that we stand for. Are we about inclusiveness? Are we a closed shop or are we an open shop? And persons' opinions will differ. It's big, same issue Toronto. So a lot of people on social media slagging Toronto and the project. So we have to accept that some persons are a bit closed-minded, others are not. As I said, I'm definitely not closed-minded because we're global citizens. So I think that we need to embrace diversity in sport. We need to embrace the different dynamics that can make the sport a great global sport, and instead of view certain things as weaknesses, see the strength in it, because ultimately a strong international product is what we should be about to get rugby league as a mainstream sport. It's too good a sport not to be a mainstream sport, and so personally that's my strong belief, and that's what I would always support.
We've had some response. You haven't introduced the guest.
I did when he first came in.
No, you didn't apparently.
Oh, okay.
Romeo Monteith, the head
The
coach
great
of
Romeo
Jamaica.
Monteith, one of the great evangelists in the sport of rugby league.
Austin from the Serbian Federation has proposed a friendly. Now he's put Serbia versus Jamaica, but if I was Serbia, I'd be saying that we'll play in Jamaica.
Yeah, that would be cold if you went to Serbia.
Play in February. Martin was on last night. He left a comment on YouTube. This might be a tricky one because it might not work out for many various reasons. I think Toronto went down the same route. He says, here's something worth raising money for. How about some scholarships for a few of the best young Jamaicans to come here for a season, be registered with a League One or Championship club, but also with a National Conference club, and play at the best level they're capable of every week. They're likely to develop greatly while here and help to raise the standards back in Jamaica. I guess there's all kinds of visa and legal issues about that. But in theory, it's a good idea.
Yeah, again, it's not just visas. In my opinion, again, it's how serious do we take international football, and what's the vision for it? Where do we want to go with it? And as you know, it's human beings who makes decisions. The bottom line is that rugby league as an attractive sport for elite athletes from non-traditional areas, it's not a viable option because of the current thinking, I think, of persons who control the process. Because ultimately, in Jamaica, I can tell you now, hands down, there are domestic players good enough to play in League One, and there are domestic players good enough to play in the Championship. I will stand behind that boldly. But the simple fact is, the pathway is not there for them. And some of it is bigger than rugby league, because like work permits, for example. But I think rugby league can influence certain decisions. So in other words, right now I believe that in order to get a work permit for a Jamaican rugby league player, I think, if I'm not wrong, because I was told back in the day that one, you have to be in the top 17 or 16 in the world at the time, and that the player would have had to play at least 75% of their last couple of internationals. So, we are there now, but at the same time, there is no proactivity, there's no proactiveness from anyone to say, okay, open the door for one person. One person can be a role model, and pursue that. And that's the issue with the sport. I look at lacrosse. Lacrosse came to Jamaica after rugby league, and based on their approach to the sport, they went to the high schools. They don't even have clubs. This is the high schools, right? Right now they're in over probably 20 or 30 high schools in Jamaica, supported by the American Lacrosse Association, and they've been going to tournaments overseas, and they've been taking the players into US colleges. So a lot of my rugby league players have left and gone to lacrosse, simply because a pathway has been opened. That is what is needed, a pathway. And it's the same for many countries, really. I mean, Serbia is on the rise, but really and truly, is there a pathway that we can establish for developing countries so that one or two persons can become role models? Why can't a Serbian national or a Jamaican national be signed for a League One club? I don't see why not.
Well, you brought two guys over who clearly are of a standard that perhaps will benefit them playing a season over here. At least we play in the summer, it's quite warm a bit of the time.
Yeah.
Very short bits.
But I'm perhaps more importantly even than them playing over here in the near future is what will they take back for their teammates? I mean, I thought Kimsey, physically stood up to some guys who we've seen playing Super League week in, week out. And he may have done a couple of short stints, but he wasn't found wanting in any degree. Jensen, difficult for a winger to get his hands on the ball late on in a game, but that experience will do him the world of good. What will those two in particular take back to their teammates, and how will that spread amongst the domestic players back home?
Well, I think the energy will be positive. You can't get experience unless you get experience. And that is why, I made a decision this year to say any Jamaica team playing must have domestic players. We have to move away from, just simply saying we don't have the money to bring a player across, but we have to. They learned a lot this week about the speed of the game, because it's the first time playing at that speed. As the player said to me, the drills are the same. The techniques are the same, but it's much more refined, it's much more crisp, everything is faster, and that's the difference. So, they'll be ambassadors to say, guys, we need to find 30-40% more energy in your training, in your warm-up drill, go quicker. It's what I've been saying to them over the years. Say, guys, you can't pass the ball like that, it can't be an island time if you're going to play at a certain level internationally. And it's a cultural thing for us, because we're very relaxed, it's our style. So that's one of the main things for them. The speed of the game is what they're going to be talking about to the boys. Professionalism in terms of just the mental approach to doing things, because they would have seen guys out there physically being pummeled but still going. So it's the attitude. I saw Jamel Coleman, he got a late shot from one of the Knights players, and he knew that there was no half on the bench, and he was just fighting on. He didn't want to come off, and he played on for at least another 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes, with his hand, and I was like, oh my God, I think he needs to get off, but he didn't want to come off. That's the difference, because back home, man is coming off the field, man in pain, I'm gonna go sit down right now. So it's a mental thing as well that needs to be different. And as I said, I was really impressed with Kamisi. Kamisi is one of Kamisi was perhaps the second or the oldest player in the camp. A lot of people don't realize that Kamisi is about 32, 33. And physically, as you said, he held up quite well. the big thing for him was, well, the speed of the game was shocking. We told him about it, but to experience it is different. But the air also, I feel, was a big factor. Like I think he gassed up for about 15 minutes. But the main thing was just feel of that air, because it felt as if his throat was bleeding, and I know what that is like. So I was just there thinking, when is he gonna fall? Because that pace, it's different. And it's like when certain teams come to Jamaica and play in the heat. Whenever the Barla guys come, or the Lionhearts guys a few months ago, they struggle. We have to stop the game for water breaks after 20 minutes, and but one thing I notice about them, again, it's the mentality. So they'll be dying literally, like, but they're still running, they're still pushing themselves. And I think that's the difference between being in a country like England, where rugby league is a professional sport. There's a clear pathway, and you know that if you want to progress, you have to push through the barriers. And I think that's where we're lacking in Jamaica, because we do it for fun. The players just play for fun, and that push factor is not there. It's only when you get them into like a national setting and they know that, okay, only 17 guys can play. I may have 50 guys in training, and I'm saying to them, listen, these 1%ers is what will make you not make the team. So you're running and you're tired, but you need to keep running. Unless you have a medical issue and you're going to fall down, you need to keep running. That's the only time they start to lift themselves a little bit. So that's the biggest challenge for us. And I think these players, that's what they'll be talking about. It's that mental approach to the game. And I think Chev Walker, when Kamisi said when he spoke to him, that is what the conversation was about. It's that mental toughness, it's pushing through the barriers.
Gareth says I'm too quiet. I'm listening to the guest. It's nice to have
We've got one of the most captivating guests we've ever had. So.
It's fascinating to go through a press conference after a match and actually listen to someone speak for more than a minute answering a question. Lewis has asked, would it be good to have an England Knights America's tour playing Canada, USA and Jamaica, help spread awareness and create big occasions? Obviously they went to Papua New Guinea last year. You've got the Americas competition as well. But you welcome, I'm sure England Knights and fancy now, having played yesterday at Headingley in the cold.
Well, Paul Anderson was talking about the most important thing, and we'll come back to international scheduling, because everything you've said lends itself to. We saw a great game yesterday, and we don't know when either of these teams are formally playing again. But Paul Anderson was saying that the thing that he needs the most for the England Knights and the pathway they've got here is that tour element, the getting people together, the bonding in hotels, the feeling uncomfortable because you're in an environment or a culture that you're not used to. Jamaica would be the perfect place for them to come. You would look after them magnificently, but you'd make it difficult for them as well. And to have an England representative team, with the greatest respect to the Lionhearts and Barla, that carries names that people might recognise from Super League, that would be a massive next step for you if that could be arranged.
Yeah, well, definitely. Again, it's another step up. A game such as that is possible in Jamaica. There are several stadiums. Sabina Park, home of cricket, could host such a match. The National Stadium could host such a match as well. So it's definitely something that is possible. I think the US is also a good place that the Knights can look at in terms of on their calendar. Serbia, these are all countries that are knocking on the doors, and if given enough time and support, by the professional leagues in terms of releasing players, could put together teams that can be competitive on the park. So yeah, I definitely understand where it's coming from, in that it's really important to go on tour. It definitely builds character in the players. So I definitely support what they're going to try, what they want to try to do. I mean, PNG must have been awesome for them. So I guess it's about where else can they go to replicate something. And I mean, they did lose a match in PNG, so that's even better, because now, it's with a team like the Knights, if you're going out and you're always winning, you're not getting what you really need to get from it. So yeah, I mean, it definitely could work. all depends on the politics. You know, as I said, if players can be released, we certainly would give them a return fixture in Jamaica.
The important thing for you, obviously, is building to the World Cup. It's a massive opportunity, not just for the first Caribbean nation to qualify, but we even saw it yesterday in microcosm at Headingley. It's a different audience. There were some people there you could quite clearly hear were at their first ever rugby league game. There were people bringing their children for the first time. There was a steel band which lent to the whole atmosphere of it. But what do you need? I mean, you were talking yesterday very eloquently about trying to get to the quarterfinals of the World Cup when you're here, and that's not an unrealistic goal, and you keep being told you can't do things, but you manage to get over those barriers that are put in front of you. So bearing in mind that America have been to a quarterfinals, that you should set that as a goal. But what do you need to do between now and 2021 fixture wise to be ready to achieve that goal?
Well, I think quality fixtures is what is needed. Next year, if we can get a position that is similar, whether the Knights again, whether the full England team or Australia, you know, in warm-up matches before, because I think Australia is coming to England next year.
Well, we think so as well, although it hasn't been announced yet.
Well, we hope so, right? You know, so if that's on, certainly, you know, a type of a warm-up game like that for us would be good. Games against Wales, Ireland, or Scotland, you know, would be good for us.
Teams that you would be targeting if you were to get to the quarterfinals that you need to beat to achieve
right,
that.
definitely in our hemisphere, you know, France. You know, France.
You've been to France. That was a really good experience.
Yes, it was, and you know they're really keen for a game again. You know, so again, that's why for me, I'm so frustrated because, as I said, when I came into rugby league in terms of getting involved, you know, at a certain level, representing our board and everything, one of the first things I said every time I came to England was, you know, our international structure is just, there needs to be more belief in the product. You know, why are we doing this if it's not to make our sport the greatest sport there is internationally, you know, for our fans and for our supporters, because you know, everybody believes that their sport is the best, and by all means, but we really need to believe in the product. I think that it's ridiculous that as countries, you don't know who you're playing, you don't know when you're playing. Progress is being made now. We now have the America's Championship every 2 years. We have the Middle East and Africa Championship. We have the European Cup and stuff like that going on. Pacific guys are, you know, having a set thing now as well. That's good. So we've been making steps, but what we need is we also need friendly fixtures that are planned, fixtures that 2, 3, 4 years out, you know who you're playing, and I see no reason why, because right now we have, I think, over 40 countries ranked. Easily, you know, you could say, okay, whether the top 10 or whether the top 20, you know, whether it's 2 friendlies, you have to play, and then, you know, 20 ranked to 40, it's the same thing. So then it becomes something that is known. People can plan holidays or stuff like that. I mean, I'm from a poor country, but at the end of the day, I know people who, if they know that in 2 years' time, you know, there's going to be a game at place X, and I say, listen, Jamaica is going to place X in 2 or 3 years' time, that would be a great holiday for you, and watch your boys play. People would make plans, and it's the same for everybody else.
What they do with the cricket.
Exactly. The cricket international schedule it's planned out. The rugby union, it's planned, and I'm talking about the friendlies. I'm not just talking about the set tournaments. That's what we really need to do. But I'm not an issue of money. You know, that's the bottom line.
But isn't that what the profit of World Cup should be used for?
Well, I guess yes and no. I mean, realistically, you know, how much is the profit from the World Cup in terms of to extend to everybody in terms of fixtures. I mean, we know that if the full member nations, you know, get a grant. We know that, you know, the international body is starting to staff itself, you know, so things have been progressing from when I just came on board. A lot of things has happened, but we're perhaps just not at that point yet. We're
You're pleased now the refreshment has arrived and it's hot.
and it's hot. Good. I like that word, HOT.
Bernard, this is not a Subbuteo Rugby pitch. It's just a generic Subbuteo pitch. You can't play league and union on it. That's not an issue. Thank you for all the comments on YouTube. Plenty of them there and on Facebook as well. We did speak about the salary cap earlier, Dawn. We might. I don't think we've got anything else really have to say about it, did we?
It hardly seems live when it goes back to 2018.
Unfortunately for the conspiracy theories who would love Leeds to be deducting millions of points and have all their trophies stripped of them, no more than that.
They didn't win any the year they broke the salary cap.
Yeah, they were rubbish. And they accepted their punishment in the way that Wigan, as Phil Wilkinson reported earlier, did not, and that's why it went to a tribunal last year. And Leeds put their hands up and said, yeah, we broke the rules, it was accidental. We didn't mean to spend it on these players, did we? Look,
It didn't do us a huge amount of good.
So there's not much else we can say about it, Tom, but yeah, we mentioned this at the programme, and I think that's that on that. People are still talking about that. We're not talking about that. The World Nines. We mentioned them earlier. Obviously, Jamaica were not involved because they were here.
But they should be. Because Nines is a perfect vehicle for development. That it's matches of 18 minutes duration, so you're limited if you're with the greatest respect a lesser ranked nation to the damage it can cause. You don't need to pick a squad of 22. You can have 15. Everybody gets the chance with unlimited interchange to be part of something. Is the mistake we made, if indeed it was a mistake because this is the first time, not to have an extra 4 teams and they'd be developed, the Serbias, the Jamaicas, the Canadas, that would have got massive benefit out of this?
Well, it's a very political one. I have to be careful what I say. Firstly, you know, Jamaica, we were extremely disappointed not to be in the Nines. We are the top ranked America's nation at the point when these decisions were being made. We were in the World Cup. And I think that, you know, on the strength of those 2 points, you know, I think that Jamaica deserved to have been there. But that was not the case. And so, you know, we moved forward. So it's not about we were playing these fixtures. No, that's not the reason we were not involved. At the end of the day, we know that the American market is important to rugby league. But saying that the market is important without, if you look at it over the years, there has not been, as far as I know, money pumped into the States, you know, by anyone to try to do anything to push the game along. So we want the market, but we're not putting any fund in there. Okay. So it's a tricky one. On what basis were they invited instead of Jamaica, for argument's sake? You know, what is the rationale behind it? It can't just be the same market because, you know, as I said. But anyway, we're disappointed. I thought that it would have been the perfect, you know, setting for us. Would have been our first time.
Would have suited you as well.
Would have suited us.
The one thing Jamaicans have naturally is speed.
Definitely. You know, it would have been our first time to Australia, and a good chance for us to engage a different market, in my opinion. But all that being said, you know, USA represented the Americas well. You know, they did win the Americas Nines that we had in May. So I think it was also good for them to be there. I think that they gave a creditable performance. I definitely think that they could have done 20, and make it more about that. Because, again, we have to take the sport serious. We are starting to do so. Money is always a factor. So 4 additional teams I know you know, would have cost them some more money, and I understand that. But my hope is that the concept becomes cemented and is taken seriously. I think right now the plan is for it to be every 4 years, I think.
We were saying just before you arrived that it could work if it was every 2 years.
Yeah, I definitely think that the members should push for a review of that, because
An alternate hemisphere, so then you could involve Norway if you're over here, or
Exactly.
Germany or whoever.
exactly, so a lot of thinking is going on right now in international rugby leagues, which is good. We've come very far away, so we have to be careful not to be too pessimistic. And there are so many different agendas. Everyone has their own agenda, and you can't please everyone. So we have to be fair as well. And that
But I think
balance is hard.
the thing that I think is really important for the sport about where you are at the moment, and we'll talk about, because people need to know the journey that you've come on, how many teams are playing domestically, you personally, what you've sacrificed to get rugby league up and running. But I just think the one thing Jamaica can bring that perhaps no other nation can at the moment is almost the diaspora that's behind it. So when you hear yesterday, and it's I think the third largest Jamaican community in the UK, you did a couple of training sessions down in Chapeltown, which is the heart of the Jamaican community. That same could have applied with the Nines, that it's, as you say, it's not just about what you do on the field, it's the whole new market that you can bring to the sport. And we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that that's an economic factor as well, and how important that is if we're going to break new markets, which is what everybody talks about.
Yeah, definitely. I think my experience here in the UK, has been that the West Indian community, they are not really involved in rugby, period. It's football mostly and cricket. And so I think that there's a unique opportunity for us being in the World Cup. There were a lot of, new faces at the game yesterday. I don't think a steel band has ever been playing.
It was magic, wasn't it?
We're putting together a petition to get rid of the band that's currently in the South Stand and have that in every week because it was superb.
Yeah, that was surreal, and as you say, it's a whole another market that can be tapped into if it's done the right way. There are over 800,000 Jamaicans.
But it's playing and supporting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that makes you doubly valuable. The other thing that you hinted at, obviously, was the change that we're now getting in the number of nations that are playing. But one of the most expanding markets is the Americas in its widest sense. So you played against Chile in the qualifiers. Colombia were given status at the Congress. There are other South American nations now that the Brazilian women are playing in the World Cup. Argentina have got some. Can you foresee an America's Confederation, with starting at Canada in the north and going right down to maybe Argentina in the south? Would that work? Is that something that we can develop?
Yeah, definitely. I think the international board is keen on seeing confederations established. I think we have 3 now. So I think the Americas is the next big project, and I think over the next 5 to 10 years, or maybe sooner, who knows? Because it all depends on how quickly these nations become proper members, right? Definitely. I think, again, it's very important for us not to lose out. I think, the other code has been very active in the Americas for a long time, but really and truly, I think it's not really kicked on as it could have. And I think that we need to learn lessons as well. And I think one of the weaknesses, because my background, I have a rugby union background, one of the reasons I took the league so strongly, apart from the simplicity of the way the game is played, and I'm thinking, this is just much better, but the pathway. I asked a rugby union official a few years ago in the early 2000s. I said, how can Jamaica get to a World Cup? Because I'm a plain and straightforward person. And he started telling me, oh, so you do this in the Caribbean, you play these guys, then you play those guys, then you play those guys, then you play those guys, and if you win, you play those guys, and if you win, you play. And I sat there and I was looking at him like, that makes no sense. And I said, but that's almost impossible. What is the purpose of being involved if there's not a fair and equitable pathway to your World Cup? And then I was given a lecture about markets and about how Mexico's 100 million people and that's the market they want. And I realized that, that is not what sport is about. I know that sports is about economics, but sports is also about equality. It doesn't matter if you are, Usain Bolt running 9.58, or if you are, John Doe from, Madagascar, one of those countries, running 12 seconds. You're in the same race. And that's one of the things that attracted me to league, because when I started speaking to people and I realized that, but there are not many countries playing in the Americas, and the pathway was a playoff at the time and so on, and I thought, but if you have 4 countries or 5 countries or a region, we could have a direct spot for the Americas. And it's one of the conversations that I helped to develop back then. So for me, these other countries coming on board now, your Brazils, your Chiles, your Colombias, your El Salvadors, joining Jamaica, USA, Canada, it creates an excellent opportunity for us to come together as a region and really push forward our development and really further add to the credibility of international rugby league.
And start to push for 2 spots in the World Cup.
Exactly.
I know that there's been limited but some interest in Trinidad and Tobago. Any other Caribbean nations? Because what they'll see is Jamaica playing in a World Cup in 2 years' time. You would hope that whatever the television deal is, it's on the BBC, that will filter back in some way.
We hope so.
So that people will see and get that sense of huge national pride from being in a World Cup. There's nothing quite like being in a World Cup. We don't know yet where you'll be based, but hopefully it might be a city like Leeds where...
Well, that would make sense, wouldn't it, with the large
we saw that yesterday, didn't we? If it's not London, it's not going to be Birmingham because there's no rugby league. Although Coventry, so wherever you're sited, let's hope that there's a link into the local community. But it will go back home. And do you think that might trigger interest in... we don't appreciate that, when you're in the North Caribbean and the South Caribbean, it's, the whole of the continent of Europe apart. But if you got more islands playing, would that help? Do you think there is an interest there that perhaps could be heightened?
The funny thing is, interest has been there. You say Trinidad, and that's an interesting scenario. So our intercollegiate competition in Jamaica, has the University of the West Indies, and nationals from all over the Caribbean, they attend. And a few years ago, there were quite a number of students from Trinidad there. And they won the competition one year. They had about 6 or 7 guys. And I was like, but, these guys are going back home. We could have a Trinidad association established. And I spent a lot of time in the ear of one of the boys, and he went back home and he did the hard work. He put together a board, about 4 or 5 of them, got registered as an observer, opened their bank accounts, everything, constitution, everything was done. And for them it was okay, we have done what you said, so we need to kick on now in terms of match official courses and stuff like that, coaching courses and everything. And that didn't happen. It didn't happen. And they wanted us to take the Jamaica team over there because they thought that would definitely bring interest. But again, we didn't have the money, so we couldn't do it. And then, I suggested maybe you could take some of the guys here, but you know, at the end of the day, when you're young and you start something and you think that there's just not the support system there, you see it as a waste of time. So the guys pretty much went off and just played rugby union. And that is how the association became dormant. And I think it's a missed opportunity because Trinidad is I think it's the second largest English speaking country in the Caribbean. And I think it's a missed opportunity. They do have a decent culture of rugby union. They have their own grounds and stuff like that. Um, Schools playing and clubs and I thought it was a real opportunity. So that one went. I'm not gonna say it's gone because maybe there can be some neighbor jealousy us being in the World Cup and maybe someone will have some interest again as I said. We've spoken to other islands as well, but part of the issue, all right. So a few years ago, and again, it's just approach. One of the things I said, why are we not pushing Rugby League Nines? Because new nations really and truly play 13s. It's difficult, and the appetite is not really there. Nines is doable, but at the time, I guess that vision was just not shared, because if you look at even the rules, having 9 teams, didn't help you to qualify to be recognized as a member, as an observer. It had to be 13s. And again, I think that perhaps that was a missed opportunity by us, because we have to be realistic about the world we're in, the world and the type. Rugby league is a young people's sport. Young people are all about being on the move and quick and just go. So I think we missed something there. The other islands, the English-speaking islands are small in population. So it's kind of unrealistic to think that you can support a country like St. Kitts or Nevis or Antigua with less than 100,000 people, and they're going to have 8 club teams or 6 club teams and 4 under 90. It's not going to happen. I don't even think they have 6 football teams.
But they might get a nines team together.
Exactly. And this is what UN has done differently from us. So all of these countries, most of them have 7 teams. St. Lucia has a 7th team. So I think again, different markets require different things. In South America we have Chile and Brazil and Argentina. You're talking about millions and millions of people. So you can start and then get to that point where you have a decent support base. But in the Caribbean, realistically, you're never gonna have in these small countries, 8 teams playing or 6 teams playing, especially because it's a contact sport field. I mean, that's another major thing. Medical costs and stuff like that. That's one of the biggest hindrances when you try to get this thing started. And so I think a different approach is needed, and I think that the world we live in is all about marketing. It's all about the show you put on, and nines can bring that. I can see a Caribbean 9 circuit with 6 countries.
I'd come.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So yeah, I mean, we play quite a bit in Jamaica, and I tell you hands down, sometimes I look on and I think, rather than dream about, that first Jamaican player that signs a contract and goes off the championship or whatever, I'm thinking, but if I had the right investors, I could have a 9 circuit that could be a TV spectacle, and that would be well supported, because it's just a different energy. And 2020 cricket, that's where they are now. That's huge in Jamaica. That's hugely supported. And when I put on my 9s tournaments, I mean, we don't do any advertising or anything like that, but the crowds are good, the vibes is great, and the rugby is good. So I think that for the Caribbean, that's where we need to look. I'm not sure, being in the World Cup, I'm not sure how much of an influence it will be on the other countries. They know about it. I talk to people on Facebook, a lot of the union people ask questions, but the league, unlike other sports, it's not as if rugby league is going to a country. Okay, there's interesting guy and I'm interested. It's not as if Rugby League can go, okay, you're interested. I'm gonna come. Here's £10,000 to get started. Here's some kit. You know, no, it's not like that. You know, and a lot of these countries, as I said, they play union. They are already getting that financial support from union. So there's also issues there because people don't want to risk, you know, losing their grants or whatever. So they don't really want to be involved, and they see it as a threat. So it's a lot of things, and as I said, what I realize is I know that strategically we want the G20 countries, you know, that's big. But I'm looking on and I'm saying, well, we want the G20 countries. We're not putting money into the G20 countries to get them going. So, you know, it's one thing to want them, it's another thing to be doing actively. The money's just not there. So the smaller countries, nines could be a way to fast track them.
I don't know if there's questions
well,
there,
Bob,
because I don't want to monopolise.
Well, we just
there's a couple of things I need to ask you, but
funding has been mentioned, and Bob says, what's your view on the growth of league in Toronto? If you had your time again, would you seek to have a massively funded Kingston club a la the Wolfpack and grow the country's game from there, or how you do it at the moment with the grassroots and development of talent?
That's an interesting one, because in Jamaica, for about 10 years now, we have thought that, you know, league is just different. We think differently. So the first thing, Dane came out of Australia, used to play the Newcastle Knights. You know, he started Hurricanes Jamaica, and that project was started with the intention of having the team play in the USA competition, and that would become our elite club. Over the years, I guess being around it and realizing how people think and stuff like that, I guess a bit of the enthusiasm has withered for us. But I have always, you know, had a vision where there's a semi-pro setup in Jamaica with one club or two clubs playing against other Caribbean clubs, or in the US or in Canada, to be honest. But again, you need an investor with vision and with belief, because I mean, Toronto, Ottawa, New York, Kingston or Montego Bay, you know, Florida, I think that's the future of the sport. So it's not on my radar in terms of energy right now, but certainly, you know, when Eric Perez told me a few years ago that, you know, one day he envisions, you know, being a part of Super League. I mean, I looked at him as if he was mad. I felt he was mad, and we had a long conversation about it. And you know, he said a lot of things, and I said, well, this he's a dreamer. But less than 10 years later, the Wolfpack are in Super League, and there's New York coming up, there's Ottawa coming up. So it's not a mad dream. It's the world we live in. As I said, it all comes down to financing and marketing, and I think it would make a huge splash, because there's no other sport at the club level doing that right now in terms of for rugby. For rugby, I mean, well, I guess the UN guys are starting that now. They have a pro thing going on. I know there's a team coming out of Toronto to play in the US thing. The cricket, you know, they have done it with the 2020. But again, the models can be so different. Feel it could be nines.
Mm.
You know, it's cheaper. You know, but so it could be nines. And then
I think that's what we saw this weekend, that nines is a product in its own right that can be developed, that it will take some specialist athletes, but also what I like most about it, and we've only touched it over here, we had a tournament at York when it first started. You have to have all the skills. That for me, rugby sevens is basketball with an oval shaped ball, and whoever scores the last try tends to win. And nines works because that element of defence is vitally important. So both sides of the skill set you have to be successful. There is clearly more physical contact with nines, whereas with sevens it can just be about if you can get the ball wide and get an overlap, you score. I think we've got something that in developing nations is it immediately marketable
True.
compared to the cost. I mean, we saw with Denver, you know, how expensive it can be to take and ultimately how costly it can be
Mhm.
to take a test match to the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong teams.
Mhm.
There were two things I was going to ask you, and I am determined at some point for you to tell us your story because I find it fascinating. We all talk about legacy, particularly what will a World Cup leave. Is it right to say that the legacy for Jamaica would be you get your own headquarters? Because the one thing that people won't really appreciate here is that you don't have a ground. You know, it's not that you don't have a Wembley Stadium. You just don't have a ground that you can call a rugby league ground. You know, genuinely a piece of grass with posts on it that you scrabble around for where you play. It may not have grass on it. It may not be arranged until the very last minute. So to have your own headquarters would be a wonderful legacy of playing in a World Cup.
Yeah, definitely. That for me, that's the one thing I want to achieve out of this. If come the end of 2021, you know, we have a home, then I think all the work would have been worth it, because that's something that will last. It will outlast me, and you know, it's big on my agenda, on our agenda, and I really hope that we can engage our government to, you know, to help us down that path. It's a very difficult one. Kingston is landlocked. It's very expensive there, and the next parish to Kingston is St. Catherine, and flat land. It's all been earmarked for factories and housing and many different things. And you know, we're simple people. You know, we're not connected in society. I mean, you know, we're you know, so we really don't have that influence. You know, so for me, all the noise I make whenever I speak to the media back home is just we really would appreciate the ground. You know, it really is sad that you're in a World Cup. It's sad that you've been playing a sport for so long and there's nothing in place to support you, because it's not as if you can't be supported, because I mean, football fields are built all the time there, and all the community spaces are controlled by football clubs. And you know, I'm saying last time we were in a World Cup was 1998. It's been 21 years, and there are other sports being played here, and you know, it it's bitter for me, to be honest. It's bitter for me because again, you know, when you see you have a community of people and they can't be comfortable, it's it's no joke. I mean, I remember when Canada came to play in 2017. You know, we rented a football field, and just before the match kicked off, you know, security from the institution came and threatened to close the game down because, as far as they were concerned, you know, they weren't contacted to get a contract to do the game. We had our own security, and we didn't know that we had to use their security because we weren't told that. And I was there thinking, this is madness, you know. Canada is on the field, ready to go. Jamaica is on the field, and here's this guy telling me I can shut your game down. And it was just so disappointing for me, you know. You know, we've been playing on field before, and the football buses, literally, they come up and they say, hey, field is damp, get off our field. And we have to stop the game and get off their field. So it's been bitter for me in that respect. You know, nevertheless, I think it's one of the things that makes us so strong, because when you struggle so hard to simply play the game you love, you get a certain appreciation of what you're doing, and it does build a certain fire within you. And so, you know, we just keep pushing, And, you know, we're still at that point. There are no rugby fields period in Jamaica. It's not just league. I mean, rugby union, there's nothing. And it's a big issue for me. I feel like I'm going around in a circle. Like when I speak to the government people, they say, well, go identify a piece of land that you want. And then I go, but I don't know which land you own. You're the government. So what flat land do you own? And they're like, go find a piece of land and come and tell us. and it's like a circle. But you know, you learn to feel as you go along. I mean, I'm just a regular person with a passion. You know, I'm not an expert, so I'm hoping that over the next 2 years, you know, I'll be able to figure out a way that can get us that feel. So it really is important for us. You know, we don't have an office or anything like that. So, you know, we just do what we have to do. We've always been doing that. But it has to get to that point where there's a bit of change because, as I said, when I'm gone, when Roy is gone, Andrew, all those guys, we want the sport to be there. We want kids to know that I can go to X place to play rugby league. There are some sticks up. I can practice my kicking every Saturday or Sunday. This is where games are. So we're gonna keep fighting for it.
You talk. I mean, again, I don't know if there's any.
No.
You talk about that burning desire, that passion inside you, that adversity that shapes you. The more you get knocked back, the more determined you get to move forward. Nobody in Jamaica epitomises that story as much as you do. Now, I know that you're quite reluctant to tell your story, but for our listeners and viewers who perhaps have not heard it before, and very few people have over here, it is astonishing what you have sacrificed personally to get this sport up and running. It almost came about it by accident because of injury. As you've already mentioned, you know, your family doesn't even live in, your immediate family doesn't live in the country where you're doing all this development work. Just tell us a little bit about what you've done and then why you've done it, because it is, you know, if we were to give an award for the person that sacrificed the most to further the sport, it would be in your name.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long journey. You know, the history of rugby league in Jamaica started in England. I was just, you know, just last night I messaged Steve Price to say, hey, Steve, tell me about the West Indies team that you guys started. I mean, whose idea was it, you know? And I think, you know, he was saying that it was himself and a few other guys who, you know, just looked at it and, you know, got it off the ground here in England. Obviously, I was in Jamaica. I blew my ACL in 2003. I just, you know, I just been cracking into the rugby union national team. Was really enjoying playing, and I had an accident in training. And in 2004, I did surgery, and around about that time, we were approached, Jamaicans, we were approached by the guys in the UK through emails, you know, and Dane Campbell in Australia inquiring about, hey, there's this other code of rugby called Rugby League, what do you guys think about playing? The email went to our rugby union chairman, and I was a part of the union board at the time. And I remember him saying to me that, you know, some persons have contacted him about rugby league, and it's a professional sport. And, you know, because he's a chairman of union, he doesn't want to touch it. So he's passed it off to, you know, the ex-chairman of rugby union, which was a person called William Masterton. So I heard about that at first, and we weren't really paying it much mind. But a few months later, there was a big falling out with the rugby union chairman and his right-hand person, who was Paul Morris. And we consider Paul Morris to be the father of rugby league in Jamaica, and I'll tell you why. So they had a falling out, and then we were all very disgruntled with how rugby union was being organized. You know, if certain team was not in the finals, the field wasn't being marked. You know, basic stuff, a little petty stuff. And so, you know, Paul said we can show him how to do it. You know, so that's how they started talking about rugby league. And I remember, you know, we were calling as a group representatives from about 3 clubs to have a discussion about the possibility of playing this new code of rugby. And I remember being in the meeting saying, what? Why? You know, we are already struggling playing rugby union. There were no kits, stuff like that, medical issues. And then, you know, they said, well, we can do it right. We can do it the way it should be done. And I thought, probably just all talk, you know, no action. And then I thought, by the way, how is this game played? I mean, yeah. And they said, well, we're going to show you a VHS. And they showed us a VHS tape. I think it was like a Super League game. And I remember we all sat there like this, like, that looks fun. You know, there was no rocks, no malls, no line. It was just quick. And I thought, that's how we try to play a lot. You know, just, yeah. And so we got interested. We formed the first board. There were like 10 of us. I think I was the director of Junior Rugby League on that board. And then over the next few months, you know, Paul and William, they really went all out in terms of trying to engage. Because these were Caucasian men. And in Jamaica, you know, a lot of the business owners, a lot of them are Caucasians. And so they had the connections. And so things moved pretty quickly, you know. I mean, sponsorship and stuff like that. They found a company willing to sponsor a competition if we could find the teams. And so we had 3 teams. And we said, no, we can't use 3. We need 4. So one club, Vauxhall Vulture, decided to branch off and have 2 teams, and, you know, formed a 4th team called Olympic Angels. And I was with the Winnie Park Red Sharks, and, you know, I was on crutches. I remember the boys looked at me and said, Romeo, we don't have a coach, you know, you need to coach the team. And I was like, no, man, I'm playing. As soon as I'm playing. And they're like, yeah, but right now you're injured, so you need to coach. And I remember turning up to training on a Saturday morning on my crutches, trying to teach a game I had no idea about. You know, I would just watch the videos. I would sit with Paul, and Paul was the best salesman ever. Paul was like, yeah, man, I know about rugby league. My son plays in New Zealand, and, you know, you just do this and you just do that. And it was hilarious, because when I look back at what we were doing, you know, it was semi-rugby league, you know, but we were having so much fun. And first ever game was played in January 2005, when all 4 teams came together. And, you know, picked 2 teams, I think red and blue, and they went out there and just bashed each other. A couple dislocated shoulders and, you know, a couple sprained ankles, and I was like, it's brutal, but I like it, you know. And so we said, okay, it's doable. And we had our first season, May that year, 2005. Paul was the referee. Paul would stand at the half line and call tackle 1, 2, 3, try given at the half line, because he couldn't be up and down. And, you know, we didn't know better. We thought this is great, this is good, you know. So that's how we got started. And I was always interested in the administration side of things, because my mind is like that. And not being able to play really helped me to work around Paul, work around William. You know, they taught me a lot about how to engage sponsors. Media stuff, Paul was really good with the media. Paul, you know, was writing stories and sending out, and, you know, we're in the newspaper, and, you know, stuff like that was different for us. You know, they did some good things. You know, they got kit for all the teams, I think, by 2007. So all the clubs look really smart in their kit, and we were even trying to do partnerships, like with the football fields, to put wells in and have the fields properly irrigated. So it was like a community project. That was the main thing that was different with with what we were used to with rugby union, where we were just playing out in the bush basically. No one knew much about, you know, union. And, you know, we saw it moving slowly. You know, move from 4 teams to 5 teams when the police came. You know, West Yorkshire Police came across on tour in 2007, I think, and that opened our eyes again, because we thought we were just phenomenal athletes. We were fast, and then saw these guys come off the bus and we're thinking, we're gonna run around them and just destroy them. And then, you know, with Paul riffing from half line, calling 1, 2, 3, and 4, they still beat us. And we were like, no, man, we're a bit off pace. You know, we need to learn more about the sport. And it's like each thing that happened, I was more motivated. I was like, you know, all right, we have done this. Can we do that? You know, I started looking at the junior thing seriously. How could we have junior teams? You know, we were told that we couldn't go into schools because of rugby union. So I tried to do club teams. You know, we actually played and like an under 19 game back in about 2008 or so, but I realized it's not the future. And I thought, you know what, I'm going into schools. and so 2009, that's what we did. Um, so and I started looking at different things, and I really fed off Paul and William. Unfortunately, Paul died, I think, 2000 and probably 8 or 9. I was a chairman at the time, because by that time, people like William was like, I'm old, I've, I've, I've done the work, I show you what to do, now go do it. And I was a chairman at the time, and I was like, whoa, we felt a bit lost, because Paul was really our inspiration. Him and his wife Sue Morris, she was at the game yesterday. It was so good to see them. And I thought to myself, Paul is not here anymore. I was making plans to migrate, because my dad lives in New York, my mom lives overseas as well, and things were just uncertain. And I thought, what can we do to ensure the game continues? And we started talking to Dean Thomas, who was appointed as head coach in 2008, and Dean said, why not see if the RFL will help with like a development officer role for somebody? And so that's the last thing I wanted to do as chairman before leaving for my dad. I was supposed to leave back in January, January 2010, and I remember spending over 6 months in 2009 negotiating, trying to get a position for a development officer. And it finally came through December, and I was like, yes, RFL said, they'll have to support it. And so, my job was to now find a person to do it. And I was like elated. I was like, yes, at least someone will be there carrying on the administrative work. January came around, and the candidates, no one really wanted to do it, because the younger guys coming out of college, they wanted health care, they wanted a pension, they wanted to know how much money am I going to get. We couldn't give them any of that information, and so everyone was like, they were very, and I was like, wow, after all that energy, I'm surprised that no one is jumping at it. And I spoke to my dad in January and said, yeah man, I'm still coming February, because I was supposed to go the end of February. But I was in I was in a sad state, because Kevin was supposed to come across on the RLEF to do the interviews in January, and I couldn't find the candidates who I thought I would have, and I was just having a conversation with Roy, and Roy looked at me dead in the eye, because I was trying to convince Roy to apply, because Roy was in the banking system, and I was like, Roy, this would be good for you. And Roy looked at me dead in the eyes and said, Romeo, no, you should apply, because rugby is your passion, so this is what you should do. And I was like, no, I'm going to New York. No. And he's like, Romeo, this is what you should do. And we spent some time talking about it, and then it's like he had planted a seed. I was like, should I really? I started to second guess myself, and a few other things influenced my thought process. And I said, you know what? I'm going to apply. I was a bit uncomfortable, because as I said, I was a chairman. I had been pushing for it. I didn't want it to seem as if I was pushing for it for myself. I had a very difficult conversation with my dad to say, this is after the interview and everything, to say I'm not coming to New York again. And he was really disappointed, because I'd only just connected with him. I was at 28, and I met my dad at 28. And for me, going to live with him was a big part of knowing who I am. But as Roy said, if you get a chance to do your hobby, why not? And so I took it on part-time. And the rest has been history. The tough part for me was about 4 years ago, my wife migrated to Toronto. And I have a little girl, Zoe, and she wanted me to come. And it was a hard decision, but I said, sometimes some things is bigger than yourself. I thought to myself, if I get up and leave now, many of the steps we have taken, things will either become stagnant or fall back, because I'm the only admin person, working that amount of hours. Yes, we have a board of 5, but at the end of the day, I'm the engine that runs it. And I thought, can't do it. You know, I can't just leave yet. And I couldn't convince her not to go. So, you know, we came to a decision, you know, she would go and I would, you know, I would visit and stuff like that for the time being. And that was really hard. You know, when we qualified last year, you know, it was such a relief for me because honestly, many times, you know, I've doubted if the personal sacrifice is worth it because family, nothing is as important as family, you know. You don't get a second chance. Every day I miss with my daughter, my wife, I'll never get back. And so, you know, to make that decision to stay was really big for me. And I can't say I don't regret it because it's family. But I realize that some things, as I said, it's bigger than yourself. And what I'm trying to do, what I'm hoping, we've qualified. A lot of things is happening right now. And I am hoping that by 2021, we'll have enough resources so that other persons can take up the slack and create some new dreams and create a new pathway that will contribute to the game.
Paul has mentioned.
Told you it was a great story.
Yeah, people enjoyed it. The people who are still with us are enjoying this. Tim and Nicholas, because some have dissipated. I don't know what's up with them. Paul has mentioned Jason Robinson's comments. I've got John Davison, our colleague, spoke to him last week. Jason Robinson said, you go through a Leeds Rhinos game and you see very few black people in the stands. How far away are we from the Hay Hills and Chelmsford? A couple of miles, if that. There's a disconnect, but we want to bridge that gap and let people know that rugby league does exist and some of the top players are Jamaican. I guess it's more of a Leeds issue than a Jamaican issue, isn't it? And yeah, I looked at the England Knights team yesterday. I didn't go there thinking, well, this is the thing that stands out to me. In the starting 13, looking from the stands, they all look the same because they're all white in white shirts and they all look like generic rugby league players. Cruz Leaming came off the bench and added a bit of diversity to the England team. I look back at England teams or Great Britain teams growing up, Eloy Hanley, Martin Afire, the obvious examples. Jermaine McGilvery today. How do we... But I guess as other people have pointed out to John's tweet, you can't make people like something just because you like it. We love rugby league, but you can't just make rugby league's down here. Some Jamaicans are playing. Come and watch. We saw that yesterday. Plenty of people in the crowd enjoying themselves, and I guess the frustration is, and we spoke about this after the game. When do they next see Jamaica, all the stars of Jamaica in action, and how we, as a sport here, give you the support to do that? Because we all need everyone to work in and push in the right direction. And as we said at the start of the programme before you came in, it's okay the Rugby League International Federation changing their name, but it means nothing if they're not doing things on the ground.
I think the other thing that I've been fortunate to see the progress you've made over a long period of time. This isn't something that happens overnight. And whilst I wouldn't say it's easy to set up open age club sides, that on its own is not enough. And the work that you've done with the collegiate game to spread it into new geographical areas, but also introduce the next generation underneath to the sport, that's what's going to underpin everything. That has been, you know, when we see names like the Caribbean Maritime University, it's just fantastic the work that you're doing beneath the club level. So, you know, we might be aware of the Duhaney Park Red Sharks because they're the most dominant team over there. But how important is sort of like the under-19s and getting in? You said how hard it was to get into schools, but you are now in colleges. There are, what?
Six colleges playing.
But not all just playing in the centre of Kingston either. You've broadened the sport.
Yeah, I mean, we have GC Foster College, that's in St. Catherine. It's the only sports college in the Caribbean. You know, as a matter of fact, they're the only ones that were really strong on rugby union before, because they used to have a team in the union competition. The University of the West Indies as well had rugby, because I played rugby union there. Now we have Caribbean Maritime, which is on the other end of Kingston, close to Port Royal. And then, you know, we have a teachers' college involved. So, B.B. Cook High School, Cedar Grove High School, Old Harbour High School, Ian Bennett High School, Calagua High School. These are all schools now where boys who I coach at Michael are now coaching under 19s, 16s, and 14s. And that is what is crucial for us in maintaining the game. With the colleges, we're an official part of the association, so we can't be kicked out unless there's a vote, which is critical. In the high school system, we are not a part of the official principal sports association. This is called the Intersecondary Sports Association. That's the reason, or one of the reasons we're only at 10 or 12 schools. So if I can break the mold and get recognition, it opens up the entire country to the sport. Because many principals won't authorize a team because they say we are not under the association. But then no, they won't let it in because they're like, oh, it's dangerous. Oh, I don't think this is. So it's a cultural bias that's there. Who's gonna pay? Who's gonna pay if there's a service needed? And I'm like, but kids break their arms playing football. Kids break their legs playing football. There were like 2 kids struck by lightning, last month playing football. People, they get sick running. We have had athletes who've, fallen down and died running and stuff like that. So I'm like, it's not fair to punish us because we're a contact sport. The fear mongering is not right. So that's a barrier that we want to break down. But what we have done successfully over years, as you said, is to create a pyramid. Started with the 4 clubs. The next thing that we did was the high schools in 2009. Next thing that we did was the colleges in 2010. And then the next thing that we did was the Division 2 in 2012 or 13. So we have a nice pyramid. We've had primary school tag rugby going for about 3 years, but the workload for me was just too much and the schools weren't supporting it. I would go out and train 5, 6, 7, 8 schools for 6 weeks to play, and then only 3 would turn up to the tournament because they don't want to spend the money on bus and lunches. But we have the right pyramid. What we need is to expand it. So again, money makes everything easy. If we are supported by our government, we get an annual budget of about maybe $7,000 US to run the sport from our government. If I can convince them, we're in the World Cup, we're ranked 13th in the world. We need to do more for the sport on the island. If our funding is increased, then we can move to a situation where more competitions can be created because they want to play. The bottom line is people want to play the sport. When they see it, especially the kids, they like it. And many principals, it's something different from football that they're not doing well in our track and field. And so immediately they can have success. Our under 19 champions BB Cup, they won last year. It's the first national title they have won in a sport in like decades, and it's very big there. They had a parade through the town. So that's, as far as I know, it's the first parade of a high school. Any form of rugby in the Caribbean. Music playing and everything. You know what I'm saying? They were so excited. Old Harbour High School is the same thing. They won the under 16s. Again, they don't win anything as in any other sport. There are several schools like those that I want to tap into to expand our footprint. As I said, we're in Kingston and St. Catherine, which is the population hub. We're in St. Elizabeth, which is about 3 hours out. But there's still the wider Jamaica. There's still another 180 schools that if I can get 30, then the type of athletes that we can attract will be even better.
You mentioned Jason Robinson. Obviously, he had a huge impact in helping to promote the game. It's no coincidence over 7,000 people turned up because it was hitting the right notes. We talk a lot on a weekly basis here about celebrity endorsement. You obviously are absolutely passionate about the product and how good it is. Is there anybody back in Jamaica that you can convince to back the World Cup bid? I know that people have trained close to Usain Bolt, and he is aware of the fact that there is rugby league. But is there anyone you could bring on board to be sort of ambassadors for your World Cup journey, or?
Well, I mean, for me personally, I don't know any personally, but over the years, you know, other persons within our family have made connections, you know, and stuff, and they know about it. But my approach, Phil, is it's different. As I said, like for me, if you send a tweet out, you know, and you know, and so on, yeah, thousands might see it, but is that getting me somebody taking up a rugby league ball? So you know, I hopefully I don't sound in a way, but for me, that's not the crucial thing for me. For me, it's that one other kid who is playing rugby league. It's that one other school that's playing, and you don't do that through, you know, endorsements. You do that through going in face to face and convincing someone to start playing the sport, and showing them the benefits of it versus the risk. And you know, that's my person, that's my focus. There are cultural issues as well, Phil, like with Jamaicans and rugby. You know, Jamaica has, you know, it's a very homophobic culture, and you know, rugby is a close contact sport, and so people's idea or impression of what the sport is not what the actual sport is. You know, they just think it's men jumping on men, and that negativity, it's something that you can only overcome it by engaging people one on one. Like I tell you a personal story. My brother, you know, has always hated the fact that I was playing rugby. Because we grew up playing cricket and football and track and field, you know. And I picked up rugby union when I was like 12 or 13. And from the very first day, he always had to go at me. He was always criticizing me. My entire family, you know, what kind of sport this are you doing? You know, you shouldn't be playing that. It's not right. And they were carrying on, carrying on. I was like, have you ever played rugby? No, but you know, it's men jumping on men. You shouldn't play. I'm like, have you ever played? They're like, no. I went through 7 or so years of abuse from my brother, about always teasing me, but he was serious. He really wanted me to stop. You're gonna die. You're gonna break something. It's not right. It's men jumping on men, and it's not. And I remember, you know, I said to him, I went to Cayman Islands on the rugby union national team, and he was like, you actually made the national team, you actually managed to travel on the rugby team, but I'm a better athlete than you, I'm faster than you, so I could do it too. So I said to him, well, come and try, because you are faster than I am, you are bigger, you are stronger, you do well at it. And he's like, alright, I'll give it a go. And I said, are you sure? Because men will jump on you. Are you sure? And he's like, yeah, because I want to travel, you know. And I remember he played one game. You know, I got him on in the second half for about 15 minutes, put him at fullback to keep him away from everybody. And you know, a few balls went around there to him. And I remember standing and look at him he got smashed a couple of times. And I was like, yes, let me hear what he has to say after the game. So after the game I went to him and I was like, so do you still think that rugby is just a game where men jump on men and it's homophobic? And he's like, nah, man, these guys are out of this world, man, you know. No, man, I respect you for playing this. How you play this? And that it changes his perspective. And I'm saying that that's an issue in the community. And you mentioned that not many people here in the Caribbean community, they're engaged with rugby. It's a cultural thing, because you know it's history. It's slavery and what used to happen, and you know what has been passed on from generation to generation, and you know it's just a big thing for the Caribbean, and it has transformed into sports. Like in the Caribbean, you know, you don't do open showers. You know, you don't look at other men being naked, and there's just big issues, and just by what they see in clips, they go, no, that's not right. That's a big part of the problem, and those barriers, it takes a lot to break down, because if you don't know what's happening and you have a perception, how do you change it? And if you tell me that don't go out at nights in Leeds because if you're walking after 11, people will mug you or stab you. I have that perception. I'm not going out because this is what I've been told. So that's a real challenge for us, and I don't know if in England again if it's different, because again of culture, certainly people from the West Indies have been here for a while and they're children, so they're more English than anything else. So I don't know if that's an issue here, but for us in the Caribbean, it's a big issue. And part of breaking that for me too is getting women playing, because that's big. So yeah, Jason, big help, massive help. Really, I'm really happy to have him on board with Alex. It has lifted what we've been doing, and I think, I don't know what the answer is in terms of 7,000 people came out. I'm sure that a couple of, a decent amount of that were people of West Indian heritage.
They were.
How do you get them to another game? How do we get them to a Leeds Rhinos game? I don't know, because again, it's a cultural thing. It's a tough one.
And one of the other things I was going to mention, I'm conscious of the fact that you spoke for nearly an hour and a half, just captivated by every word. The history of rugby league, particularly in the north of England, is we've always been at our best in deprived areas. That where we are our strongest and where family actually means something, community means something, is that we've been the sport that has been able to get into communities that are neglected in many ways and that other sports don't take the time and trouble to. There are areas like that in and around Kingston. Could rugby league, cultural differences aside, be the sport that starts to break down the barriers and gives those that feel the most disenfranchised with life an outlet? Because, as you say, once you try it, that physical element is actually what people enjoy the most. And it's almost as if the Jamaican nation and the deprived and difficult areas where the gangs operate the most could benefit the most from a sport like rugby league? Or is that naive to think that way?
No, it's not. It is actually something that we consciously approach. We approach that process to engage these difficult communities. I told you that the very first game of rugby league. I was telling Alex today that the first game of rugby league in Kingston was played in Olympic Gardens. They had a team, and Olympic Gardens is one of the baddest areas in Kingston. Like, first game of rugby league, no joke. Field is in the middle. One side of the community on the left. Boys were 100. There literally over 500 people there, lined off with people. The boys, some of them were armed. The other end, because they were at war, quote unquote, with each other. They had their guns on them as well, and the Olympic team was playing in the middle against Vauxhall. That's the first game, and many of the boys who played in that first game, were gangsters. We knew this. We had one of them. He died, in bad circumstances, because he got in the game for about 3 or 4 years, and kept him off the street a lot. But as the team began to disintegrate, he went back out in the streets, and then he died. So there's a lot of that goes on. Personally, I know quite a few players who are were involved in gangs, or their families, and rugby league has been their savior. Sports in general, I mean, that is what it does. In several of our schools, such as Cedar Grove Academy, BB Coke, and Old Harbour High, the reason the programs were approved by the principal is because they are intervention programs. So all the kids who are in gangs and who are having problems, they are channeled to the team. So either you get suspended, or you join the team, or you go to training. And even at my school, I remember years ago, Calabar High School, that's how many of the boys went on the team. Detention, with your troublemaker, detention, suspension, or go play rugby to get the aggression out. So yeah, definitely. Right now, we just welcome back the 7th team to the NCC, West Kingston. West Kingston Hyenas, and a lot of those boys are from Denham Town and Tivoli Gardens, and though arguably those are the most violent communities in Kingston right now, and it's just something else engaging them, because first it is a time issue that they're always late, because kids have to go. They have to take a circuitous route, a safe route, literally to leave their homes, some of them. So they're always late. They come, and some might be from different areas. So you'll have teammates who they are at odds, their lanes or streets are at odds, and they're on the same team. Sometimes they got each other on the field, So it's been interesting because, we had them a few years ago, and they folded midway the season because of disciplinary issues. We actually went down into their community to play for the first time, and that was a real eye opener for members of it was doing the park at the time, and they stopped. Midway they stopped. This time around they went through the entire season and they played. They entered the knockout and they were supposed to play in the 3rd place. They didn't show up for the 3rd place though. But as I said to persons back home, this is what we want, because when these kids are at rugby league on a Saturday, at least for 3-4 hours, we know they're in a safe environment. Some of them are asking about the national team and stuff like that, so they're energized. So it's definitely a sport that it's for everybody, because you have some guys who are uptown, as we'd call it, quote unquote educated people, but as in we would say in Jamaica, it's a ghetto youth sport as well. Many of the players are from deprived communities. Many have been in gangs, some may still be in gangs, but our mandate is to push respect, push discipline. If you look at our match official shirt now, it's at the back, it's respect, and we just try to use the sport to engage and to teach us as much as we can good values, and that's what we want to continue to do. And some of the best players are from these areas because they're absolutely fearless. So yeah.
Just realised we've got through over 2 hours now without mentioning referees until the final couple of minutes, which is quite good. In closing, the national anthem yesterday was brilliant.
Fantastic.
Loved it. Denise Pearson was superb. Although I'm sure the crowd thought it was over about twice.
Yeah, I knew that would happen.
It is a long one, but it's worth listening to.
What's the second?
It's the second verse. Yeah.
Well, you can't do the second verse of Guns Over the Creeks, it'll upset Scottish people. And I noticed from Twitter, you've been eating fish and chips with curry sauce. Would that be something you'd be taking back to?
No. The curry was good. Fish was okay. It was a good spot. The first time I came here, it and had fish and chip, I was not impressed. But today I was partially impressed.
We'll get there. We need to take to the right fish and chip. Any final questions?
No,
because
we've covered up because it's past. We've gone.
I know you've been absolutely fantastic. I knew you had a story to tell. I wanted as many people as possible to hear it. That it'll go out on the podcast as well. I can't wish you anything but continued success. If there's any support at all that anybody over here can give, just let us know. We'll put it out there. Can't wait to see you for the World Cup. Hopefully a couple of internationals this time next year. Maybe Wales and France would be nice. But anybody who didn't know the story of Jamaican Rugby League that now does, I'm sure will join me in thanking you for everything you've done so far, and continued good luck and success in everything you do from here on in.
Thanks for that, man.
Good to see you.
Respect, man. Thanks for having me on.
And one can only hope we hit
Our
the
pleasure.
Apple Podcast charts in Jamaica next week. We did
Yes.
it last week.
You can hear it in Jamaica, so
Yeah, man, I listen to it sometimes. Man. I do listen to it, man.
I listen sometimes. It's the greatest review we've ever had of this podcast. And we're going to put that on the adverts this week. Romeo, thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks.
Safe journey home. Enjoy the sunshine. When are we going to see the sun again?
I think there's one day in July next year.
Summer bash time. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with another special guest, although one who you will have seen on this programme before, mentioning no names, but you know who she is. So thanks for coming. Thanks for listening. Thanks for coming. It's the end of the programme. It's been a long and difficult couple of weeks. But thanks for watching. And we'll see you again soon.
Oh, so you guys do a visual